So in between doing the Hellcat and putting your new roof on your Jeep, you're going to talk about this aircraft,
Right.
which has more meaning for you
Yeah.
than others.
Yeah. This is a Handley Page HALIFAX B.III. Came into service, I think, in about late 43, mid 43 perhaps. Was the second four-engine heavy bomber developed for the RAF Bomber Command. The reason it's got means more to me is that my father served in one. He was a gunner, mid-upper gunner, serving in that turret there from February 1945 onwards to the end of the war. So several months, and I think he flew 13 missions, I think. Probably shot down one German night fighter that was about to turn in and attack them. Mission at 110G. And I've got his medals. They're away being my stepson Phil is sorting out having them court mounted. So yes, I've got family history with the HALIFAX. Always contrasted, of course, with the Lancaster. The Lancaster, I suppose the bugs in the Lancaster got ironed out quicker. I think its predecessor was the Avro Manchester, twin engine. I think they were Rolls-Royce Vulture engines. An excellent X-form cylinder engine, just twin engine, which was massively unreliable. So the Manchester didn't do at all well. The HALIFAX was probably serving alongside it. Earlier versions of the HALIFAX weren't brilliant. They had to do a lot of measures. They had to try and lighten them. They stopped putting in top turrets. They started. Let me think. I think they started with Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, the inline engines. Eventually went to these radials, and one of the big issues with night bombing was the higher you could fly carrying this massive bomb load, the more your chances of surviving were increased. And the HALIFAX in general tended to fly higher than, the Lancaster tended to fly higher than the HALIFAX. The HALIFAX in turn flew higher than the Sterling. Sterling was the first one to go, flew a lot lower. From what I've heard, bomber crews being briefed for a mission felt happier if there were Sterlings flying on the raid as well, because the Sterlings would attract the German flak, anti-aircraft fire, and to some extent protect them, which is a bit macabre,
but true.
Possibly true from what I've heard. Losses to bomber crews during the war were huge. I think we lost something like 50,000 aircrew over the whole night bombing strategic campaign. The Americans, serving for not quite so long, flew daylight raids, but mostly. They also lost huge numbers to flak, to enemy fighters. It was a long fought, hard war, the strategic bombing campaign. The Germans didn't really manage to develop proper strategic bombers, so that's another story really. So anyway, my father served in these. He and his crew firmly believed that the B.III was at least as good as the Lancaster. I think its bomb bay was slightly smaller, but there are accounts to say that the HALIFAX was better built than the Lancaster. There are odd statistics depending how you read statistics. If a HALIFAX was hit, anti-aircraft fire or hit by a fighter and was going down, statistically more crew managed to bail out of HALIFAXes than Lancasters.
Why?
Apparently the emergency exits were better.
Oh, right.
It is what it's put down to. But the Lancaster got all the noise and all the fame. Certainly, what was his name? Bomber Harris, known by his crews as Butch Harris, the commander of Bomber Command, didn't like Halifaxes, didn't really like Stirlings. He much preferred the Lancaster. Having had a tour around a remaining Lancaster at the Yorkshire Air Museum, which is actually a full-scale reproduction of one, really. What I was told there was that during development, Avro, who built the Lancaster, kept quiet about the problems, but sort of carried on working at fixing them. When the Manchester was re-engined, they put 4 Merlin engines in. It worked a whole lot better when that was how the Lancaster evolved. It could be said the Halifax took a bit longer to get good. It didn't work so well with Merlins because of the engine placement relative to the wing, the aerodynamics, and the rest of it. By the time but Hercules engines, these radials, it worked a lot better. Its operational sealing was improved. Its range was pretty good anyway. But it got somewhat sidelined. It's less well known.
When you mentioned the Yorkshire Air Museum, it sounded like you talked about a Lancaster.
Did I?
I think you said Lancaster. You meant this, didn't you?
I meant
Because it was a
Halifax.
Halifax
It's
you went
Halifax,
into, wasn't
yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah.
I thought
There's very few
the
Halifaxes.
Lancaster you went into was Hendon, wasn't
Hendon,
it? Yeah.
decades ago.
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
is one we went to
Yeah, went to have a
2 or
look
3
at.
years ago.
Yeah. Non-flying, of course. There aren't many Halifaxes in the world. There's certainly none flying. I believe Canada has got one. There's another one because Canada pulled one out of a lake in Norway and rebuilt it, and it looks beautiful from the pictures. There's another one was pulled out of a lake somewhere, an earlier version, a B.II or something, at Hendon, but they've not restored it. It's as it was pulled out pretty much, and it's displayed as a sort of wreck, lying as if on the lake bed, I think, in effect. And I believe Canada has got plans to restore another one they found, I think. And kits are a bit few and far between. I would have preferred to build this in 148 scale, so the same size as the Lancaster you might have seen in my previous series. It's a better scale. It's easier to work on in some ways. You can put detail in more effectively. However, the one 148 scale kit of a Halifax is by a French company, a low volume plastic kit, Fonderie Miniatures. It's the only 148 scale kit of it. I haven't yet developed the moral courage to even start on it.
Oh, you've got one?
I've got one.
Quelle surprise.
Those of you who've seen my Dornier vlogs,
is it going to be...
I think it's at least as bad and
really?
difficult to put together as that,
No.
if not worse. I think there's something about the moulding in lower volume productions.
Yeah.
Thicker plastic, a bit cruder.
Oh.
It would need a massive amount of work.
I'll sell it for you.
No.
Okay.
And, in the meantime, I thought, well, Revell at least make a decent 1/72. I managed to get one. That is this. Earlier, of course, I had the Airfix one. Airfix produced one when I was much younger, which was great. Me and my cousin. I think my cousin is still building his Airfix one. A little bit cruder, but not a bad model. Because his father, my Uncle Bill, was the bomb aimer on the same aircraft as my father, which is how they met. My father became Uncle Bill's best man, which is how I met my mother, which is how I'm here, and my sister, of course. So that's just to give you a fuller family history.
So what about these things around? What are they? What's the? It's a refueling truck.
I've not really done this before. I've done a bit of a diorama with this one. The company called Noise, I think, Noyes, which produce these. They're like sort of a picture of a ground scene. So this is a picture of an RAF
apron sort of
parking
thing.
apron,
Yeah.
where the aircraft would taxi into and turn. And here I've tried to show it being prepared for the next mission, and managed to find old Airfix kits. This is a Matador refueler. It should have fuel cables coming out, but I haven't done that yet. Here's a guy sitting on the wing putting fuel into one of the fuel tanks. I think there's a later Airfix kit produced some of the other vehicles. There's the RAF tractor with the bomb train behind it. There's this, which is
Tilly.
a Tilly, which was short for utility vehicle. This is a standard, built by the Standard Car Company, utility vehicle. Just for trekking around airfields. And it also include this. I think this is an oil tank for refurbishing the tanks. A Bedford utility truck. Bits and pieces like ladders and bicycles. There was another Airfix one. Some other company did a reproduction, and they've done some other bits and pieces I couldn't find anywhere else, but they're in a horrible soft plastic, which I've managed to
What's he
cover.
towing?
I think that's a starter accumulator. So it's a load of heavy batteries in a trolley, which you would pull over to an engine and plug in to get to fire the engines up.
I see. And these two guys are just standing around lollygagging.
That's the I don't know. That's the what should be called? The WAF. His WAF driver, when was all doing.
Oh, with a woman.
Driver who drives the standard utility, and he's the air officer commanding. Look, is he? And the crew, the figures are from some East European country. I can't remember the name of the company now. They're really nice, tiny little figures. I'm not quite sure they've got the uniforms quite right, but they're close enough. It's like they've got some figures wearing dungarees, and I've never seen a RAF ground crew wearing dungarees,
no.
But whatever. And they produced a figure riding that motorcycle. He's a dispatch rider come over to deliver some message or other, and the guy for driving the tractor.
Good.
So that's the Halifax. Unfairly semi-forgotten, I think. And I just wish that some big reputable model company like Tamiya or Meng or many of the others would finally come up with a 1/48 scale Halifax. B.III, of course. They served throughout the war. I mean, the Sterling got so outmoded and so vulnerable that they took it off bomber duties and eventually using it as a transport or a glider tug for towing gliders full of troops. Halifax that carried on using this in this form as a strategic bomber, apart from some of the earlier Merlin ones, which were also used as glider tugs. Good aircraft.
Good. Okay.
The other oddity?
Come on.
The other story I've heard.
Oh, there's more.
There's another bit.
I'm trying to wind you up. Did you not see my winding up sound? That's what wind up.
Didn't like to ask,
Go on.
This is a story I think eventually first came from Michael Benteen.
Hold on.
Most people won't remember him. He was one of the earliest members of the Goons, a comedian who used to appear on television. Long gone, I think, but I believe he was liaison officer for a Polish squadron in the RAF. So he was in the RAF. Now at the back of an airplane, somewhere up near the tail, is the LSAN, which is a special,
the toilet.
A special bucket.
I got one of those.
If you get caught short in flight, you go back there and do whatever and put the lid down.
Flush.
But apparently there was a habit with some bomber bases that everybody, including ground crew, would use the LSAN to fill it up and put the lid on.
Oh.
And then when they got over Germany,
Oh.
They would open the hatch and drop it over the target. And I've heard similar stories to my father. I'll talk about given time. Apparently, this carried on. You know, the higher command didn't know about this, but eventually the Germans realised what was going on. They sent messages through the diplomatic channels, presumably via Switzerland and Portugal or something, that they began to consider this as a form of biological warfare.
Exactly, germ warfare.
They said, if you don't stop it, and we will respond in kind. So it was orders were given for it should be stopped. So. But my father used to talk about, you know, it sounds horrific now, that they would, in flight over the target, he said they would throw out coins, pennies, because, you know, the old penny was quite big, on the theory that falling through the air fast enough, if it hit somebody, it would kill them. But then it was wartime, and hatred of the enemy, as we know now, was a horribly powerful thing.
Yeah.
To some extent, I suppose people had to. Otherwise, you carry on bombing? And the whole bombing campaign is it's still highly controversial, not surprisingly. Dresden's always the raid that is mentioned, but the RAF were eventually, I mean, it was a long time before they managed to perfect their bombing. For the first 2 years or so of the war, when they finally properly researched where the bombs were falling, not many of the bombs taken to a target fell within 5 miles of it. It was called the BIII report. It was a real shock. They, you know, because this was the only way Britain appeared to be able to hit back at Germany at the time. All right, that and North Africa, the desert. So it's things were pretty tough then. British cities were being bombed, as we know. But Bomber Command gradually developed techniques, electronic for navigation, and other ways, well, just basic, simple navigation, that they managed to be able to fly to targets en masse in streams, fight their way through defences or avoid them, and they could drop enough bombs and incendiaries on a target that some places, I think Hamburg, several other German big industrial towns that had a lot of wooden construction, the explosives would blow off roofs and blow down walls, but then they drop a mass of incendiaries which would then light all the wood. And there were towns, cities where what begins to happen after that is that the amount of fire is such that it creates a firestorm. Winds start rushing in towards the centre of the fire at ground level at very high speed and funnel up. So you get a massive fire. People are hiding in air raid shelters. When they opened them up in the morning after the raid, there would only be ash in there.
Oh, ash in the air raid shelter.
That would be all that was
They've
left
been
of
part of the...
because they'd been asphyxiated and the heat was such. The tarmac of roads would melt. And it's horrific. And I think we killed an awful lot more German civilians than the Luftwaffe killed British civilians, with the Americans added in daytime. And unfortunately, the Americans would still make a lot of their northern bomb sight, how accurate it was. It was designed to drop bombs at from very high altitude, higher than the RAF flew, with great accuracy, in nice sunny skies with no cloud. But the reality of it, Europe there was an awful lot of cloud most of the time.
Yeah.
It was less accurate. And both Bomber Command and the American strategic bombers, it tended to be area bombing, whatever everybody wanted to claim.
So you're walking into quite controversial stuff now.
I know.
That is probably maybe keep for another time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there we are. And that model is as accurate as I can get it to be to an aircraft my father would have flown in. 77 Squadron. code letter is KN. And I think I've got an accurate serial number for it too, I managed to find.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
Diorama.